if you aren't willing to admit where your product falls short or your marketing, your business falls short, if you are not willing to be brutally honest with yourself, you're never going to be able to make the right deals.
Welcome to the Fueling Deals Podcast, the podcast that teaches how to accelerate your business growth through all types of deals. It's time to fuel up, so buckle in with your host, Corey Kupfer.
There are only two ways to grow your business: organically through sales and marketing and providing great products and services, and inorganically through deals. Too many companies focus only on the first way, organic growth. Welcome to the podcast, which will help accelerate your business growth inorganically. My guests are a huge variety of deal makers and experts on all types of deals who have personal experience that can help you grow, get clear, learn best practices, and avoid mistakes. We discuss everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. My guest today is Niles Heron. Niles is the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Popdog, a technology and services company focused on fixing core problems in the esports and live streaming industry. He firmly believes that entrepreneurship is about building good systems, solving problems at scale. Niles left esports in late 2007 and worked for the better part of 10 years across corporate, creative, and entrepreneurial settings, helping design and implement systems to drive growth, productivity, and value. This work took him from Detroit to Los Angeles, San Francisco, back to Detroit, with companies in BioTech, Automotive, Aerospace, technology, and entertainment. He's been part of a number of startups, a few exits, a few exciting failures, and has invested heavily in trying to make paths like the one he took more accessible to underrepresented spaces from which he came. He's taught and mentored at accelerators and incubators like TechStars, Generator, Detroit's TechTown, spoken across the country at events about the value of entrepreneurship and startups to founders and communities they live in, and is a respected voice in the Detroit startup ecosystem. He was honored by Crain's Detroit business as a 20 in their 20s award winner in 2015. Niles, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a long time since I've heard my bio actually read aloud, and it's one of the most uncomfortable things for me to write and work on, right? Because it feels like I feel like many will understand having something that someone else thinks of as being an accomplishment does not make that something that you feel like is an accomplishment. But you gotta, let people know where you've been, and that's kind of the game with the bio. Anyway, I now feel like the bio is very long, and and like I should clarify that I got the 20 in their 20s. Like a bunch of my cohort colleagues were legitimately in their 20s. I think I had actually turned 30 by the time they gave me the award. So they really, snuck me in under some technicalities there. It's all.
I love it.
It's the value of it's one of the best deals you can ever make in life is hiring a good PR firm. So that's,
listen. Despite the modesty and what sounds like a feeling like this, there's more you want to do. Being in your 30s and having done everything you've done is impressive. Before we talk about that more, though, I actually want to take you back. I want to take you back to when you were a little kid growing up. And what did you want to be when you were a little kid? Because my guess is that, running an esports and live streaming company might not have been it, but who knows? Maybe it was. What were you thinking when you were young?
I think that I wanted to be an astronaut and a firefighter and an architect. And all at the same time, of course. It was like three part-time jobs that I wanted in each of those fields at a master level, of course.
Love it.
What actually happened though is my father both of my parents are journalists by trade, though neither are still in journalism. And I wanted to own the newspaper. My father was on strike for 4 or 5 years from the time I was 7 until I was 11. And maybe a little bit younger to a little bit younger, right? But in that range. And there was a point at which I was sitting at home, and I talk about this a lot when people ask kind of how I grew into the career path that I've taken. And I was sitting there on like the piano bench in the house that I was growing up in, and I was crying, and my mom was like, "What's wrong?" I just said, I'm never going to let this happen to my kids. We were talking about the strike and what was going on. And she was like, what do you mean you're not going to be a journalist? And I said, no, I'm going to own the paper. I think that at a really young age, I got firsthand or painful secondhand experience of what it's like to have somebody else control your destiny.
I hear that.
Like one of the things about my failures that I always tell people is that at least they were mine.
Yeah.
It wasn't that somebody else made a bad business decision and the company went under. It was that I did something, right or wrong. And maybe worldly forces, are more to blame than I always am in some of those things, because that's how it works sometimes. But unequivocally, I want the maximum amount of control over my own destiny. Me and God, those are the people that I want involved.
Yeah, I got that. And that's the classic, entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, I understand that because, I wear a thing on my wrist from myintent.org that has a word on it, and it's called freedom. And it's my highest value. It's why I'm an entrepreneur. I don't want anybody else tell me what I want to do. And it also means, for me, it also means freedom for all people from, oppression and discrimination and the broader thing. But in my life, I want me and everybody that I have any influence on and people I don't have to be free. And I think, that's part of that entrepreneurial spirit.
No, I mean, I think without question. And I think that it's worth note that while it sounds simplistic, the only way to be free, and I mean free now of oppressive systems and structures and discrimination and all of that, the only way we find balance amongst people is freedom. And I mean freedom now economically, entrepreneurially. The point, one of the things we see very clearly is that many of my friends with advanced degrees who have built themselves into careers based on the value of those careers, absolutely more than anything else understand what a golden shackle is.
Yeah.
And listen, I have no desire to be shackled, golden, bronze, or copper. Right. I'd rather be free and poor than rich and tethered.
I got that.
Fortunately, if you do it right, you can
right.
Like you don't have to be
right.
You can be wealthy and untethered.
That's right. And that's what we're up for. So along those lines, in that entrepreneurial spirit, what was your first real business? However you define that.
The first real business that I decided I wanted to start was I started trying to build people computers in my my neighborhood and in school network when I was probably 11. I didn't ever actually sell a computer, so I don't know that I got much farther than the name. The first real business that I worked in and ran was I co-founded an internet radio station, early 2000s, 2001, 2002. I guess 2002 we would have started the station, and that I continued on that for 2.5 years, and then folded that activity into a job that I ended up taking when I was 17.
Wow. And that was very early in terms of the internet radio.
Oh yeah, no.
Right?
I mean, it was a program called Winamp. And there was a plugin called Shoutcast, and you could get a server. You could either host your own server or get server space dedicated. We're running this program, and then people could click a link if you sent it to them, and they could listen in through their Winamp client. It was a high friction. It was a high friction service.
Yeah, a little different than having a podcast on iTunes that anybody can every phone they have, right?
Exactly. A little bit harder. Discovery was a big problem for us.
I love it. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now, what you're up to, and then I want to start swinging into the way that you've used deals to grow your business. But just tell us a little bit more about your businesses, what you're up to, and what you got going on.
Sure. So Popdog is, as you mentioned, a tech and services company. We are fundamentally focused on content creation and content consumption, especially in the world of live streaming. There's always some crossover, like no line is perfect. And so we also look at some video on demand, things you would normally, YouTube videos, people who create content for YouTube. We I think often unnecessarily call them influencers. I'm trying to get away from that phrase just because I don't think that does justice to what is actually happening. Social media influencers, specifically those that work in and around the gaming video content market. My company is building technology and also is providing services to a number of the top content creators in the industry, that we're building analytics tools to better measure and present their value to brands, which is one of the big problems that we have in our industry. Mm-hmm. Brands don't understand live streaming, let alone gaming. And so then you're saying, hey, I have a gaming live streamer, let me sell you a sponsorship. And they're like, can I just buy an ad? And it doesn't work that way, So, and then you have to explain to them why this is in fact a better model, or where they should, sort of like stake in the ground and measure against their normal media spends and things like that. So we're building technology to make that process easier at a very, high level description. And then we run a management firm that manages 40 or so of the top gaming creators in the US right now.
Great. So throughout, let's, I don't know where you want to stop, but maybe we started some of the prior companies and then what you do now. I mean, you've been involved in a number of different startups. I know, startups generally are raising capital. Startups are sometimes acquired. Certainly with brands, we're talking about, there are all kinds of deals that you do with brands or, with that quote unquote influencers. I know you're not liking that word, can do. So talk to me about some of the deals that you've done and how, those have helped you grow your business.
Trying to think of where the cleanest starting place is. What I would say is, as a bit of background, prior to Popdog, I ran a growth consulting firm for 3 years or so in Detroit. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, and that through that work is where I kind of did a lot of the education and worked really closely with a lot of the accelerators. I kind of had enough flexibility of time and, frankly, from a selfish place, wanted early access to great companies and entrepreneurs, right?
Sure.
That's why I'd like to teach and work in accelerator programs, is both because it certainly is valuable and feels that way in the moment to give back. But then you look up in 3 years and you've been nurturing the next crop of entrepreneurs who are building really exciting things, right? And now you know them and have a personal relationship with them. So, Michigan Funders was the company that we started when I moved back to Michigan with a few of my colleagues. The purpose of that company was explicitly to help small businesses find capital, right? We thought that there were some interesting laws we were able to leverage in Michigan. They were less easy to leverage than we thought. But that notwithstanding, the whole goal here was saying, look, we think Michigan is a hotbed of innovation, not a desert as it is, or at that point was often portrayed. And we want to be a part of helping this space find economic stability in terms of the entrepreneurial and small business ecosystem. So we were going out and finding sort of macro syndications of many small investors, all of whom wanted equity. I still believe in that model a lot, if you structure it appropriately. I think that one of the things I found out really quickly in doing that, though, was that a lot of businesses raise money to solve problems, not because the problems actually require money to solve, but because the people capable of solving the problem without you learning how to do it cost money, right? So like you hear a lot of people saying, and I will get to why this is problematic in a moment and why that caused me to shift into a consulting position. But you hear people saying, I have this great product and it's just the best product. And if people knew, and I just need, I got to get my marketing together so that people know about this great product. And the truth of it is maybe you don't have a great product, if we want to be very brutally honest. Like maybe your product is in fact maybe it is not the A/B testing you need to do on your marketing strategy, but actually you just need to do another iterative cycle on your product.
Right.
Right. and you haven't actually found, product market fit, right? So just in case there are people not totally ingrained in small business and startup lingo, product market fit is the point at which you find a sizable enough demographic that you can scale into, where you find that group of people that want your product enough to pay for it, right? That is like, I have built a product, it fits a market. You can't have a business, a startup or otherwise, that does not have a market. You got to have a customer to be in business.
Right.
And you got to have enough customers that seasonality doesn't put you out of business, that once they have the solution, it solves it forever. So they're not actually your customer anymore. Like, that's a genuine problem. If you solve a problem too well, you need to be able to sell that solution to everyone in order to be in business, because it means that, it's why drug companies don't make pills that cure things. They make pills that manage things, because there's no money in cures.
That's right. And they say tire companies could make tires that never wore out, but then they'd be out of business. Right. If I only needed to buy one pair of Goodyear tires, I would literally take that pair of tires and put it on every new car that I ever bought, because I don't need tires anymore. Right? But tires need to wear out in order for tire companies to be in business. It's a very good example. And so all of that being the case, we find ourselves in a world where we are often, entrepreneurs are raising money to solve the wrong problem, because it is easier to blame the unknown or the known unknown than the known, right? If it's easier for me to say the marketing is the problem, the organization is the problem, the capital is the problem, I need a salesperson, whatever, than to say my product isn't good enough. What I found is that that's usually not because the product isn't actually good enough, but the product just hasn't been right-sized and tailored. The most amazing suit in the world, a Tom Ford suit, is going to look like it came off the rack if you don't have a tailor measure it for you. Right? It has zero to do with product quality, with integrity, with any of that. It has everything to do with your ability to tailor it to your customer and make it actually work for them. So in helping companies raise money over the course of a year and a half, I realized that what I was actually good at and interested in, often you will find in life that they are the same, is helping people make their product actually work. Mm. That was always much more interesting to me than raising money. And frankly, raising money is kind of a con job, right? It's kind of like, so when you raise money from anyone, someone who wants to give you money, someone who doesn't want to give you money, you are fundamentally convincing them that whatever their concerns are not as concerning as they think, right? And you can do that by being totally honest all the time, and you should, but you're probably not going to tell them about the near miss incidents that you've had in the course of running your business, right? You're not going to say, this one time I almost put myself out of business because I didn't understand that a factory in China not all factories in China are made equal. Some have pre-existing certifications that allow them to pass without extra testing, 6-month delay import testing, the products, and I could put them directly into retail, right? Usually what you do the first time you've ever sent something to China to get manufactured is you say, I need 5,000 pieces. I found a company in China that can make it. They sent me back a sample. It was good. You think you're doing all the right things. What you didn't know is that Walmart will never take that product. Right.
Because it doesn't have the certification that tells me it's flame retardant. It is not built with, hexane. It is not, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And so, like, we spend all this time going through the wrong motions to try to make something happen that just doesn't really work anymore. I would much rather be on the side of things that says, you don't need money to get the Chinese factory. Like you need money to bring the right people in, or more specifically, if all you need is money, you can go get it. That was a very long-winded and circuitous path. So sorry about that. But like, the truth of it is that if all you need is money, you will have no problem getting money.
And this is the interesting, Niles, I really want you to, I love that you made that point, because people who don't know, who haven't been through it, who are thinking about maybe starting business or running business, have never raised capital, You hear so often that the issue is access to capital. We don't have capital. We can't get money, et cetera. And listen, let's face it. I just actually recorded a podcast today, with another person who works with women. And, she gave me all the stats on how women, raise a lot less money and women of color.
Yeah.
Women of color, especially, only, about 1% of them. So that, there's a truth in that. Right. So I don't want to step over that. But also at the same time, I think too many people say the problem is that I can't get money. And this is entrepreneurs of all backgrounds. They think money's the solution and they think money's the only problem. And neither of those are true.
Well, so here's the double-edged sword. And what I was saying about VCs and the sales job of raising money is like all it is you trying to convince someone that their fears are irrational. Right. And granted, if I walk in as a 6'1", more pounds than I want to say out loud, black man, right, and walk in, I am going to have a harder time raising money from a timid, non-black man often than someone who looks like them. Right. Yeah. The amount of comfort you instill in someone is of meaning, and to ignore the disconnect in comfort and trust that is built or that is not built, right, or not solved for when you don't look like the person you're raising money from is disrespectful to all the people who have tried and failed. That being said, if all you need is money, you will get money. What is often the case, though, and that every investor knows this, it's never just money. The money is going to go toward, it's not just you need somebody. If all you need is money, you can go to the bank, right? What you need, but if what you still need is proof that your business works and you're the only one who believes your business works and you have no way to validate that, you're going to have a hard time getting money because money is not all you need.
That's right.
Right. And so it's just about being very brutally honest with ourselves about what it is we actually need. I found that I was very able and frankly, much more interested in helping people raise and grow their businesses, sometimes via capital, from a position of let's figure out what you really need. And then let's put a plan together to go get that, than to say, let's just get money. And that kind of it backs into the question that we're here to talk about, which is like, what are deals that are not just customer driven revenue?
Yeah. And,
right.
and what are deals that are not just VC money, right? Because there's so many types of, joint ventures and strategic alliances and, you name it, licensing deals and I think they're so overlooked. So yeah, let's talk about some of those. And also when, I'd love to hear some examples, but also why do you think, first of all, let me ask if you agree with my premise. One of the premises of this entire podcast is that everybody obviously focuses on organic growth, which they should. I mean, you got to focus on sales and marketing and providing great products and services. But so many fewer companies focus on any kind of organic growth, and there's a lot of myths out there about that deals are only for big companies, or they're only M&A and raising capital. Do you agree with that? And if you do, why do you think some people figure out the way to do other kinds of deals and some people don't?
Okay, so first off, I absolutely agree that there are many types of deals out there, and all of them have their place. Organic growth has to be the foundation.
Sure.
You cannot start with inorganic growth. If it's like honestly, how about this? No metaphor is needed. It is just a truth. You have to start with a sale. There needs to be an actual customer for an actual product. However, once you have found the actual customers for your actual product, whatever that product is, now you can start augmenting. And now you can start saying, how do I amplify this message? Because so often what it actually comes down to is you can force growth in kind of any number of directions. But if you think about it as a point in space and time, like literally a dot on a plane, you can go in any direction. But if you go in all directions, you grow much slower in a lot of ways, right? Because you have so much more ground to cover. which means that in order to be successful, often scale is about picking one direction and leaning into it.
Mhm.
And sometimes, often I would even argue, that is where investment really does matter. That's where a partnership, a JV really does matter. Who else is going in that direction? If I'm bringing, let's say I have 10,000 customers and I'm going to head on this metaphor of a dot in space. I'm going to head, north by northeast.
Mhm.
Those 10,000 customers, unless I am the only thing they will ever need in their life, will also need food. They will need water as we head north by northeast. They will need cars. They will need service stations. They will need all types of things, amenities, on their journey with me as my customers north by northeast, which means that I am also explicitly bringing 10,000 customers towards other businesses that will get value from them.
Yes.
Who are those businesses? Where are their synergies? How do we amplify each other's message? Because some of that other business, which is a business, is in business, which means they also have a customer base. Like, it is literally two businesses dragging their customer bases towards each other and saying, how do we combine these to get maximum value for both of us? If I cross over to 20% of your people and you cross over to 20% of my people, then we literally each can gain, independent of each other, potentially, right? Significant customer bases and significant exposures. Where does it make sense for us to work together, especially when you're talking about completely non-carnivorous businesses, right? Not like I'm a smoothie shop and you're a juicery. Those might be competitive businesses. I might just want to figure out who you're partnered with and then go find their competitors and partner with them.
Yeah.
Right. But so there are always different levers, but it's about finding the synergies and recognizing that no one is everything to anyone.
And why do you think some businesses go and do that? And I find at least that some businesses are just, again, I'm 100%, I agree with you. You need organic growth. That's the base of your business, right? You're not going to, I guess there are companies out there that just solely are roll-up companies or whatever, but, absent that, 8% of your business, real businesses are going to, need customers, need products, need services, etc.
Yeah.
But then there are some of those businesses that go out and find those strategic alliances and those joint ventures and those, joint marketing opportunities and those affiliate opportunities or whatever they are. And a lot of them don't. And a lot of them I see they're banging their heads against the wall, trying to find more customers organically, and they're stalled and they don't do it. What do you think there is about maybe the mindset or the mentality or the resources or whatever it is?
No, it's 100% a mentality thing.
Mm.
In what world? Like there, and this is where I was saying this is the reason you need an organic customer base before you decide to do any deals or try to raise money or anything, right? Unless you are talking about very high-tech moonshot growth, which is the idea that someone is going to invest billions of dollars into your business and you don't have a revenue strategy, right? But you're just building something so cool that you'll figure it out. That happens. Right. It happens a lot in Silicon Valley. I'm not saying that's not viable. Frankly, I just raised money on not that, but kind of that. So I'm not looking down at that model. But the reason you need a customer is that you need to understand why you don't have two customers.
Right.
If you don't understand why you don't have two customers, you might as well have zero. Because the whole point of this partnership is to go from one customer to two customers, from 2 to 4, from 4 to 8, et cetera, right? And every deal you make, it's got to be that. Otherwise, what are you even doing? What is the business that you're in if you're not in the business of growing your customer base, either by deepening your relationship with existing customers or by getting new customers? Either is fine. I care about money in the door. And I care about the limit on the demand, right? I care about demand side limit. I care about number of sort of mouths that need to be fed by your solution. But if you don't understand why you don't have more customers, if you can't pinpoint very specifically, right? I don't have more customers because the cost of a conversion is $5. And in order to make my product work at scale, I need to be able to make 15,000 units, which means that I need to be able to spend 15,000 units times $5 per customer acquired. I don't have that money, right? Perfect. Show me your math. That's easy money to get, right? If you can show me that you actually acquire a customer for $5 and that you can give me some confidence that there is reasonable scale on that number, that once you spend $5 once, it doesn't become $5.20 the next time, right?
Right.
As long as you can show me some stability in that sort of arbitrage, that's an easy financing decision. You can go find, like, lots of people's rich uncles will give you money for that. You don't even have to know them that well, right? So, like, I'm less worried about that. But, like, if you don't have, so to answer the question, why don't people go seek deals? Because that would require them to admit to themselves, and I say this as a very kind, loving, warm kick in the ass to my entrepreneurial friends. If you aren't willing to admit where your product falls short, or your marketing, your business falls short, if you are not willing to be brutally honest with yourself, you're never going to be able to make the right deals.
Mm.
Know thyself. You have to be in a position where you can say, look, the reason I need this deal is that it gives me access to the 5,000 customers, of which I think I'm going to convert 3%, because 3% is actually an amazing conversion rate in a lot of spaces, especially applied to blanket audience. And 5,000 at 3% ends up being, insert number here, right? Yeah, like what, 300 some. I can't do math at this point in the day.
Right,
but like,
no, but it's a lot of money.
But that number of customers against 5,000, it might only be 500, 450, something like that customers. It's fine. But like, that 450 customers changes the course of your business.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And anyway, like, you can't do deals if you're not willing to be incredibly self-critical.
Love it.
Or if you are not an amazing salesperson. But truthfully, if you're an amazing salesperson, you don't need to do deals, because you're doing organic growth.
Right. And that doesn't mean there's still not an opportunity to do deals, but you may be so busy you're just getting more customers that you don't need to do it.
You should always just be getting customers if there is no natural limitation,
right,
to your customer set, right? If you can literally say, I am selling water, I am in the desert, I will not run out of water, I will not run out of desert, right? Then why ever you don't ever need to do any M&A anything. You need to just go sell water. Like, shut up. Hire somebody else to go farther to the desert and sell water. Do not worry about anything I am talking about.
That's right.
But that's not how most business works.
That's right.
Most business is not water in the desert. Most business is water in the water factory. And you got to explain why your water is the best water.
That's right. There's a lot of other water around.
Yeah, like,
exactly.
Why do I Essentia or Fiji? All sales. It's all a sales tactic, right?
So let me take us in a different direction for a second. This came from a listener that reached out to me, and I don't know if you can answer this, Niles, but let's see, because you're closer in age than I am. I had a listener in one of my earlier podcasts who reached out and, loved the podcast. He said to me, hey, I'm a millennial. I'm early in my career. I'm fascinated by deals. But, I don't know how to, how do I get into it as a millennial? And I don't know if there's a distinction between as a millennial and everybody else, but listen, as a 58-year-old guy who's not a millennial and not that age in this market, right? I was that age in a very different market. I'm wondering if you have any particular advice for millennials who are looking to learn how to do deals.
Yeah. So I, until this podcast, had never thought of myself as someone who did deals.
Mm-hmm.
I have always thought of myself as someone who sought above all else to add value.
Love it.
To every room, in all moments, at all times, as often as possible, I look to add value. Sometimes that means helping somebody find more organic growth. Sometimes that means figuring out how to partner with someone who can help that, right? Whether that's M&A, whether that's JV, whether that's a large purchase order, an agreement to purchase, right? I don't like it. It can look any number of ways. So my advice to anybody who wants to do deals is stop talking about deals unless you're Corey on a podcast, and start talking about the value you are adding to that company, and what that forces, what that will unequivocally force, in my opinion, is actually for you to really invest time getting to know the DNA and the fabric of the company that you're looking at, the business that you're starting, the business that you're working for, any of it, right? What matters? What makes that business's soul matter, right? Why is this business important? Asking those sorts of questions often, in my opinion, can lead to the right kind of deal sourcing, because it's not about, again, it's not like, I love M&A, and so I'm going to go knock doors and find companies that want to merge and acquire, right? Like, that's not how that works. How it worked, until you're an M&A lawyer and you've now done so many deals. Like, the first deals are never because you said, I really want to do deals. The first deals are because you wanted to accomplish a thing, and your deal is how you did it.
That's a great distinction, and I love that. Like, somebody who's early in the career, listen, first of all, I'm a big believer generally in that concept of just bringing value, like, being of service and figuring out how you bring value. And not worrying about, especially when you're early in your career, about even, and listen, we all want to, at some point, get fairly compensated. We don't want to be taken advantage of. But, I think the opportunity to just provide value early, be a sponge and learn, and then also just figure out where you can help people, it's always going to end up coming back to you. And you're right. Sometimes that's going to turn into a deal. Sometimes that's going to turn into a job opportunity. Sometimes it's going to turn into an investment opportunity. Sometimes it's going to turn into a failure. That's a great learning experience. But I really believe in that mentality that you raised.
It's got to be the point, right? You got to do things you love doing, because those are the things that you will stay up at night because you didn't do them well enough. It's like this. If you really love your partner, when you weren't good to them today. Mm-hmm. Even if or maybe, listen, hindsight is always 20/20 at the point that you open your eyes. So I'm not suggesting that on every day you will notice that, but at some point it will be very clear that they deserved more from you, that you should have been home more for dinner, that you should have been able to be more present for them, or that you should have, treated them better, whatever, right? Whatever the thing is, whatever the shortfall is. But like, if you don't care about that person, none of that stuff I just said matters at all. Right? And so figuring out how to partner with a company and help them partner with another company, and you don't love them, and you don't love what you're trying to accomplish, how are you ever? I don't need advice from someone who doesn't love me on how I should act. Right? I don't need support from someone who doesn't love me in that regard. That's just not what I need. Nor do most businesses need that. Most businesses need people who love the mission, who believe in it, right? And because they believe in it, they can then see, the value position that they need to create in these quote unquote deals.
I love that. One other area I want to go, in your bio, you talked about the commitment to underrepresented areas. You're based in Detroit. People have different perceptions of Detroit, may not know what has been going on there in the entrepreneurial world and in terms of business opportunities. So would you let the audience know, what's going on in Detroit, and also, what the opportunities are and the kind of work you do in terms of underrepresented communities?
Yeah. So Detroit is, point one, just an awesome place. But my bias notwithstanding, Detroit is a city that is, more historically segregated than almost anywhere else in the nation. Like when I was growing up, I was able to go to the wall that quote unquote used to separate black and white neighborhoods.
To. Okay.
And it's so funny because that wall no longer means anything. Black people live on both sides of the wall, and now there is a police fence a mile north of it. Right? No physical wall, but you know where you are and are not welcome based on how cops treat you. Like that was the world, that was the space that I grew up in, right? And it's, listen, times changed, word to Bob Dylan, and like we're getting better at a lot of this, but we still got a long ways to go. And Detroit is still an 85% black city. So when you look at what happens in 85% black cities, you see a lot of concentrated poverties. You see a lot of systemic racism, which I'm much more concerned about, frankly, than overt.
Yep.
Like somebody who wants to walk up and call me any name in the book, either you can fight or you got lucky that day, right? Cause either I'm in the mood to fight over this or I'm not. And either you can fight and you can win and I'll have to just like get called the N-word today or not, right? Like that's a very simple piece of math for me. It's the systems of control that are subversive that you don't see, right? That you just have to feel. Those are the ones that we need to work to amend them. And the only way to do that, in my opinion, is to increase the amount of ownership that is held by the people that are adversely affected by the system, right? Yeah. So when I look at cities like Detroit, when I look at places like this, why does this space matter to me? It matters to me because I feel like I can make a substantive impact. I feel like I can add value, right? By coming here, owning my lot, owning my work, and being able to, in owning those things, continue to inspire people to feel like they too can own those things. I fundamentally feel like if you had business owners on every block in disenfranchised communities, you would fix generational wealth gaps inside of 2 cycles. If your granddad owned a business, the likelihood that you will be both capable of owning a business, but more importantly in this moment, able to not fall into the concentrated poverty traps that we know exist, it's gotta be tenfold. Like if you told me it was less than tenfold, I would be baffled. So like my goal is how do I help more entrepreneurs exist on every neighborhood, so that we don't have a world where people don't know that you can. They think the only options are the ones that are prescribed and handed to them, as opposed to saying, oh, I can just, like if school isn't for me, if working for a company isn't for me, I can own a gas station. I can own a coffee shop. Right. And that's an okay life. That's an okay position.
Yeah.
Like those are the things that really matter to me. And I think that's if we look back on the people that I have respected most in my life, there have been people who showed, not told, right? Like actions over words all day.
Yep.
And in a world where actions are going to speak louder and be more impactful than words, you got to show people what it looks like to run that business. You got to show people what it looks like to live that. As listen, not to make this any sort of diatribe or sermon. We lost a great man as a culture, Nipsey Hussle.
Oh yes.
And when we look at why he mattered so much, it was because the distance from his actions to his words was almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Right. If he said it, he was doing it. If he said own your rights, he owned his rights. If he said buy the block, he bought that block. And he always did that in a way that opened the door wider for people to walk in behind him. That is like fundamentally, so it's why that type of a law shakes the culture so much, right? Because we want more people to show that path, right? And not just rap about their jewelry. And Nipsey also rapped about his jewelry, but he told us that he didn't go into debt to buy it.
Right.
And like all of that, especially in spaces like Detroit, especially in spaces that are black, that are majority minority, like you need people like that. Someone's got to stay. You can't all leave. Or if you do, and listen, I left, so I'm not talking shit, but like if you leave, come back.
Right. Which you did.
Yeah. And that's why I did, because I wanted to be able to be involved I wanted to plant in soil that mattered. not just the most fertile soil that you can, travel the world to find. Like I want my rocky soil back here.
And now, so in 2019 compared to, let's say, 2009, right? Great Recession, et cetera. Where's Detroit now compared to, in its worst times, over the last decade?
We've had a lot of very wealthy people decide that our space was worth investing in. So gentlemen like Dan Gilbert, I wish that I could say with faith or confidence that they weren't all men, but I think they have been. So, insert gender, wage, and wealth gaps here. But honestly, the thing that happened most is that somebody who believed enough to put their money up came and put their money up.
Yeah. And
listen, we can say I have a lot of things that I can say about Dan Gilbert. I think that, representation of the people in the city that he bought, the people that lived in that city, has been less than desirable in some ways, in many ways. But he also fundamentally walked into a ghost town, bought all of it, and then put all of his businesses inside of it.
Yeah.
Right. But it's kind of like, when someone buys the super fixer upper on the block that's bigger than every other house, but totally dilapidated. Everybody else kind of they'll come in, they'll buy, it's a nice house. It doesn't need that much work. And then there's that one house. It's just, it's going to be a beast. You're going to have to put millions of dollars into fixing it up. Right. But if you have that money, if you can do it, it's the most valuable house on the block. That is kind of fundamentally the Dan Gilbert model, except he bought the entire block, starting with all of the cheapest properties, right? So imagine if all of those properties that I just mentioned were owned by people, right? And he said, talk about deals. These are deals. Dan understood the mortgage market because he ran a mortgage company. So he understood how comps worked. So he looked at downtown Detroit and said, all of these buildings are underutilized, right? Their maximal value is not even close to what they are receiving today.
Right.
Then he bought all of the buildings he could buy for nothing. Now, building hadn't sold in downtown Detroit in 10 years.
Right. So there were no comps.
Exactly. So he established the only comps were his comps.
Right.
Right. He said the building next to you is worth a penny a foot, and I know it because I just paid it.
Right.
So how are you going to sit here and tell me that you're worth $20 a foot? They couldn't, and the market was crashing, and so he just bought all the buildings for nothing. And then over time, once he owned a lot of the property, right, he put his businesses in those properties and then drove the value back up. Right. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I wish he hired more black people, but what he did is brilliant. And there's no argument that can be made to that, in my opinion. But that activity, frankly, has done a lot for Detroit. That activity is certainly why I was able to move back and not struggle as much as I otherwise could have, So I think that's what's changed in 10 years is frankly, people, well, it's comps, right? Because other people have invested in Detroit, we now have comps.
Right.
As a people, which is crazy that we needed that, to be very clear.
Right.
It is nuts that we needed to get a comp
to get it validated by somebody who says it's worth something. So
and now all of a sudden, everyone, Detroit's the coolest place in the world,
right?
Because some rich dude said, I like it, right? And so that's what we're looking at in Detroit right now.
Interesting. All right. Before I ask you my last question, where can people find out more about what you do? What's the best place for them to get more information on you?
Popdog is popdog.com. you can find me personally I'm Niles Heron on every social platform. So at Niles Heron on Instagram, on Twitter. I talk a lot. I apologize in advance. I don't really, but I feel like I need to say that. I try not to be unreasonable, but I absolutely am outspoken. So be forewarned. But yeah, I mean, so like that is the easiest place to find me. Popdog, the agency that we own, is called Loaded. Loaded is the foremost management agency for video game talent in the country right now. We're super proud and excited about that. We get to do a lot of the actual deals that I didn't talk about here. I do through Loaded, because I do a lot of commercial negotiations for my clients, whether that's sponsorships or endorsements or JVs or equity positions or whatever. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So my last question, I always ask on the podcast, and I'm really looking forward to your answer on this because of your perspective on things, is, authenticity is one of my highest values. I talk about it all the time. There's a reason my book is called Authentic Negotiating. And for me, authenticity is not about external morals or anybody else's judgment, but it's about living a life and making your life decisions and business decisions and deal decisions based upon what's authentic to you, what's true for you internally. Like there's an alignment there, and I think it's somewhat related to what you talked about providing value to other people in my mind. But I'd love your view on authenticity and how it impacts the way you live your life and the way you make your business decisions.
Right. What I was going to ask is I want to make sure that the question is, how does a pursuit of authenticity or my view of authenticity affect how I live my life as a business person?
Yeah, your life and how you run your, all aspects of your life, including your business.
Yeah. I think that the easiest way to answer that question, honestly, is to say that a long time ago now, a really short time ago relative to like the world, but like a long time to me, realized that like I suck at being anybody other than me.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at it. And I tried for a long time. I tried for a really long time to be what other people wanted me to be, or what it felt like other people would like for me to be, And I found that anytime I was forced back, anytime in my life that I've been forced back into a position where I was not 100% who I am, or at least fully empowered to be who I am, which is not necessarily the same as being 100% who I am, right? But like at any point, I know I am not being limited by my inability to further act as if I were someone else.
Yeah.
I think that what happened for me was, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I don't wear suits. If you're getting married and I love you, I'll wear a suit. But like other than that, I don't wear suits. Because it felt like every time I was in a suit, I felt like I was a poor facsimile of somebody who should be wearing a suit, and like the people in the meeting could see that too. And like by the end of the meeting, fine, right? It worked out. We were okay. But it took just as much work to convince them that it was either one, okay, that I was someone wearing a suit that like wasn't supposed to be wearing a suit, or two, that I wasn't wearing a suit and that they should still believe in me. Right? Like it took the exact same amount of time, no matter what the challenge was, at which point I was like, I might as well be comfortable.
Right.
And not sacrifice, again, even those moments of like, this isn't me, like I don't want to be doing this, like all of that. Like I don't carry any of it because I'm bad at carrying it. But, I'm not. And that's no shade to anybody. But like authenticity drives everything that I do. I'm unapologetic about who I am. I feel like part of the biggest trick that anyone has ever told Black people, the biggest lie is like, if you act whiter, they won't see you as being so Black. And then you spend your entire life trying to conjugate your verbs perfectly and to only dress wearing the Queen's garments and to only speak using the King's English, and all of a sudden you realize that all you have actually done is bowed before a throne. And I'm not interested. Like, that's not authentic to me, because I'm the kid who sat on the piano bench and said, it's not that I'm not going to be a journalist, I'm just going to own the paper, right? Like, so authenticity is, and maybe most importantly, authenticity for me has been explicitly attached to all of the moments in my life when I have felt the most powerful. Right?
Hear that?
Like when you said, are you walking in your purpose? And I've been able to say yes and not be lying about it. Because sometimes, we fake that funk. Sometimes we say, this is totally my purpose. And we know damn well that's not our purpose. But like in those moments, every time I have been being 100% of the man that I hoped to be.
Love hearing that.
And like that's all that matters at the end of the day. Like, I don't have kids. I hope to be a stepdad at some point soon. But like what matters to me most is that any kids I do have or any people that look up to me look at me and don't see a shell. They see the full person.
Yeah.
Like all these deals, like if I gotta like walk in the door at the end of a long day and take my mask off so that my kids know who they're looking at, like that's whack. Also, sometimes masks get stuck to your face. That's right. It's one of the things that I've always loved about you, Niles, from the day I met you and saw you on stage at my wife's event. And, you just who you are and you speak your mind and not in a way that's, that's comes from any sort of like, better than anybody or ego or whatever. It's just you just know who you are, and that's what's out there. And that's so I'm thrilled to have had you on the show, man. Well, one thing I want to say about that is just that, like, first off, thank you for having me on the show. It means a great deal to me. But more importantly, like, I think it took me a long time to just be myself, because I felt like you needed to know who you were in order to be yourself. Yeah. That's only if you expect that you need to be better than anybody, right? You can stop pretending that you're somebody else right now if you accept the fact that you might not be better than everybody. Right. That whoever you are, you are. Period. That whoever you are, and that what you need to do is be the best version of yourself. That has to be the most important thing and the most important decision you're making every day. And so, like, if you're anxious, if you're sad, if you're tired, all of that is fine. Like, that can be who you are today. And you also don't need to know where you're going. But you got to remove the pretense and demand on yourself that you have it all figured out, because that's what's forcing you to act like somebody else right now. Yeah. Man, I feel to act like a more complete person than you believe yourself to be. That's crazy. It's crazy. And I feel like we can do an entire podcast on this topic, but next time. But next time, absolutely, exactly. So listen, again, thank you so much for coming here. I know you provided so much value for our listeners. I really appreciate having you on. Thank you, Corey. I appreciate it. And thank you, Fueling Deals listeners, for tuning in. Remember, there's only one difference between companies that grow inorganically and those that don't. And it's unrelated to size, amount of capital, or any other factor, other than that the owners and executives of companies that do deals make a decision to do deals, and then they take action. It's time to refuel. So until next week, Corey Kupfer signing out.
Thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to leave Fueling Deals a rating and review on iTunes and Google. Check out all our episodes at fuelingdeals.com to find out more resources to accelerate your business growth.